Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 175. We're going to talk about Animals from 2008. I rented this from Scarecrow Video. I had not seen this before. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. The film was directed by Doug Aronofsky, billed as Arnold Casius, written by John Skipp, who wrote the novel, and Craig Spector, who wrote the screenplay, although they are a writing duo. Special effects makeup was by Chris Hansen. Doug Aronofsky made his directorial debut with the 2000 action film Highlander Endgame. He began his career as a production and personal assistant. He moved to assistant director on films like From Dusk Till Dawn and Spy Kids. He co-wrote and directed the 2013 horror film Nurse. Aronofsky became prolific in television, directing episodes of Criminal Minds, Arrow, The Flash, Sleepy Hollow, and Limitless, and is well known for his work on the Star Trek franchise, including Discovery, Picard, and Short Treks. John Skipp is a splatterpunk horror and fantasy author and anthology editor, as well as a songwriter, screenwriter, film director, and film producer. He co-wrote several best-selling novels with Craig Spector. His anthology, Book of the Dead, helped launch modern post-Romero zombie literature, and his Mondo Zombie won the 2006 Bram Stoker Award for Best Anthology. He also co-wrote the screenplay for A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Craig Spector is a best-selling horror author, screenwriter, and a musician who collaborated with John Skipp on many novels and a few screenplays. I got to shout out fellow Utahn Chris Hansen as a special effects makeup artist who's worked in the field for nearly 20 years. He learned the craft in Hollywood, working on major films including Men in Black, The X-Files, Galaxy Quest, Underworld, and Hellboy. Looking over his credit list, I found he sculpted on Big Bad Wolf. He later returned to Salt Lake. Later credits include creating makeup and creatures for Age of Dragons, Snow Beast, and Unicorn City. Finally, while pursuing his credit list, I discovered a film that should have been on my master list and wasn't. So we'll see more of his work again when we get to Curse of the Werewolf. The cast includes Mark Blucas as Sid Jarrett, Naveen Andrews as Vic, Nikki Acox as Nora, Eva Amuri as Jane. Mark Blucas played high school and college basketball before playing professionally for the Manchester Giants in England. After a few minor acting parts, he landed his first major role as soldier and love interest Riley Finn on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He starred as football team manager Matthew Donnelly on Necessary Roughness. Film credits include First Daughter, We Were Soldiers, Summer Catch, The Alamo, and Night and Day. Lately, it appears he's been doing a lot of Christmas rom-coms. Naveen Andrews gained recognition playing bomb disposal expert Kip Singh in The English Patient, then achieved international stardom as Saeed Jarrah on Lost, earning Golden Globe and Emmy nominations. His film credits include Bride and Prejudice, Planet Terror, and Diana. He later starred in Sense8, Instinct, and The Dropout. Nikki Acox played Demon Meg Masters in the first season of Supernatural and appeared in films including Jeepers Creepers 2, Perfect Stranger, and The X-Files, I Want to Believe. She portrayed Private Brenda, Mrs. B. Mitchell, on the Iraq War series Over There, and had a recurring role on Cold Case. She starred as an undercover LAPD officer on Dark Blue. She died at the age of 47 from leukemia. Eva Amuri is the daughter of actress Susan Sarandon and Italian director Franco Amuri. She appeared in films including Dead Man Walking and The Banger Sisters, playing her mother's character's daughter, and Saved. She played Jackie, a stripper and love interest of Hank Moody in season 3 of Californication, and guest starred with her mom on Friends. She also appeared in That's My Boy as young Mary McGarrigle alongside her mother, who played the older version. I can't give Animals a positive recommendation for a few reasons. The film is undone by weak CGI effects and over-reliance on sexuality that sometimes feels exploitative, and a low budget that shows in every frame. Animals was based on a novel by the horror writing duo John Skipp and Craig Spector, who were prominent figures in the splatterpunk movement of the 80s. The film was also released under the alternative titled Wolves in some international markets. So let's go over the synopsis. A voiceover explains why some humans retain the ability to turn into animals. Sid Jarrett hits a deer. Something watches him from the forest. Sid is a washed-up football star who spends any non-working time at his buddy's Roadhouse bar as an unofficial bouncer. Bartender Jane clearly has an unrequited crush on him. In Reno, Nevada, Nora picks up two horny tourists. Her companion, Vic, kills one and starts eating him. She tells the other one to run, only for Vic to run him down. Nora hates Vic for making her a monster. Nora runs away from Vic and ends up at the bar with Sid. She picks him up and they begin an intense sexual relationship in which she bites and scratches him. She also becomes his sugar mama. Sid soon realizes that something is terribly wrong. His senses are sharper, and he's feeling violent tendencies. All his emotions are heightened. This is not a healthy relationship. On the upside, Nora kills Sid's abusive boss. Meanwhile, Nick is hunting Nora down, following her trail of victims. He's leaving his own set of bodies too. The pair are pretty prolific. Vic catches up with them just as Sid and Nora are about to leave Reno and hit the road. Nora goes with Vic to spare Sid's life. Vic assaults her and locks her up before returning with the intent of killing any witnesses. Vic kills Sid's friend before blowing up the car Sid is in. Luckily, Sid was close enough to his first change to survive that. Sid takes this second chance to clean up his life. He quits drinking, starts working at the bar, which is an interesting combination, and hooks up with good girl Jane. But here is where we get the big twist. Jane is a good werewolf, in control of her instincts. She was watching Sid from the woods in the beginning of the movie. Nora escapes from Vic and heads back for Sid. Nora and Jane battle to the death in the woods. Jane barely wins, but Sid has to rush her to a hospital. Vic tracks Nora, of course, and finds her body. And that sets him on a direct path to murdering Jane, killing everyone in his path. Sid undergoes his first change and clashes with Vic. In the end, Sid kills Vic by tearing out Vic's heart and feeding it to Jane to heal her. Sid and Jane live happily ever after in a cabin in the woods. Let's talk about the transformation sequences because they are absolutely the weakest element of this film. Animals relies heavily on early CGI that has not aged well. Hell, I doubt it looked good in 2008. The digital werewolves appear ghost-like, and they have a translucent quality that makes them look unfinished. They look more like spectral apparitions than physical threats. Now, Animals does take liberty with the traditional werewolf mythology. The full moon does not curse these lycanthropes. Instead, they shift at will, suggesting that lycanthropy here is more of a condition than a curse. There's no mention of silver bullets, wolfsbane, or the lunar cycle. The lore feels more like vampires in some ways. They hunt, they seduce, they feed on humans, and they live in a hidden subculture. They maintain their human consciousness while in animal form. Of course, this all applies mostly to the evil werewolves. The good guys don't eat people. The werewolf frequently serves as a metaphor for humanity's struggle with primal urges, particularly violence and sexuality. Animals explores how predatory behavior manifests through physical violence, sexual manipulation, and toxic relationships, presenting sexuality itself as both a weapon and a lure. From the opening, the film establishes Nora as a predator who weaponizes her sexuality. She uses her body as bait, picking up tourists who believe that they're hunters, only for them to become the prey. This reversal is significant. Nora offers consensual sex, but is actually luring victims to their deaths. Her sexuality is indistinguishable from her violence. Both leave bodies in their wake. The film suggests that sexual desire itself can be a trap, that attraction blinds us to danger, and that apparent mutual pleasure can mask exploitation. When Nora tells one victim to run before Vic hunts him down, it's a dark irony. He thinks he's getting a sporting chance in a game he never had a chance to win. When Nora selects Sid as her next partner, the dynamic shifts. She doesn't kill him. She transforms him through an intense physical relationship marked by biting and scratching. Their connection is both sexual and violent. As Sid changes, senses sharpening, emotions heightening, and a capacity for violence emerging, the film presents their relationship as profoundly unhealthy. Nora infects Sid with her monstrousness. This transformation through sexual contact makes explicit what werewolf mythology has always kind of implied. Animalistic sexuality is contagious, and losing control in one area leads to losing control everywhere. Their connection becomes addictive, with Nora even becoming Sid's sugar mama, creating financial dependence to match the physical and emotional dependence that she's already established. Nora and Vic's relationship adds yet another layer. Their dynamic is built on dominance and submission, with Vic controlling Nora while enabling her lifestyle. Nora hates Vic for making her a monster, yet remains bound to him beyond simple fear. Their relationship embodies a toxicity where one partner consumes the other, emotionally, physically, psychologically. The film suggests this kind of relationship is itself monstrous, perhaps more than literal lycanthropy. Vic's assault on Nora and his imprisonment of her demonstrates complete domination. When he returns to kill Sid, he's protecting not just his secret, but his claim over Nora. His violence isn't random, it's possessive. Now, Jane's revelation as a good werewolf who controls her instincts provides the film's counterpoint. While Nora uses her sex as a weapon and allows desire to rule her, Jane represents restraint and control. She's been watching Sid protectively from the beginning. Her sexuality, when it emerges in her relationship with Sid, is presented as healthy and consensual, the redemptive version of coupling. This contrast is perhaps a little too neat, falling into familiar good girl versus bad girl tropes. Jane helps Sid clean up his life, quit drinking, and find a purpose. She's redemptive, where Nora was destructive. The film argues that the difference between monstrous and healthy sexuality lies in control and mutual respect. Jane has mastered her animal nature. Nora has been consumed by hers. The film's heavy use of nudity and sexual content does raise questions about whether Animals truly explores these themes or is simply exploiting them. There's a fine line between examining predatory sexuality critically and indulging in it for audience titillation, and the film often crosses that line. When Nora uses her body to lure victims, is the camera critiquing her predatory behavior or participating in it by presenting her body for audience consumption? When the film shows violent sexuality between Nora and Sid, is it condemning their toxic relationship or is it reveling in its intensity? The film doesn't always seem aware of this tension. Ultimately, Animals uses werewolf mythology to explore how predatory behavior, particularly predatory sexuality, transforms both the predator and the prey. The ending, Sid literally tearing out Vic's heart and feeding it to Jane to heal her, is very symbolically loaded. Sid has fully embraced his animal nature, but uses it to destroy the ultimate predator and save the woman who represents controlled, healthy connection. It's a fantasy of transformation and redemption, suggesting we can harness our monstrous impulses for good rather than evil. Whether the film earns this hopeful conclusion after dwelling so long in darker territory is debatable, but it provides resolution to the film's central question: what happens when we let our most primal urges, sexual and violent, take control? The answer Animals provides is both cautionary and hopeful. We can become monsters, yes, but perhaps we can choose what kind of monsters to be. Now I want to talk about a different metaphor. The American small town has long symbolized community, stability, and traditional values. In recent decades, however, these towns have become monuments to economic decline, inhabited by people left behind by a rapidly changing world. Animals sets its supernatural horror against this backdrop, using werewolves to explore what happens when hope dies and monstrousness becomes the only way to escape. The setting is a rundown bar in a forgotten corner of Reno, Nevada. Not glamorous Vegas or even the downtown casinos in Reno, but the margins where tourists pass by without stopping, where the neon has faded and prosperity's promises have evaporated. Sid embodies the human cost of this decay. He's a washed-up football star working a dead-end job, drinking away his evenings and going nowhere. His story is tragically common. The local hero who never made it out, now existing in perpetual disappointment. Not lazy or stupid, he's simply trapped in a place with no opportunities and no future. Now, the film doesn't explicitly discuss economics, but the visual language speaks volumes. Empty roads, shabby buildings, the sense that everything worthwhile has already left, and this is the landscape of abandonment. These are places America has decided aren't worth investing in anymore. Communities left to slowly fade while prosperity concentrates elsewhere. Into this stagnant environment come Nora and Vic, werewolves who drift from place to place. Now, they represent a threat to struggling communities, outsiders who bring chaos, take what they want, and then move on. But the film is more complex than simple strangers bringing danger narrative. Nora and Vic thrive in these forgotten spaces precisely because no one is watching. No one cares, and no one's going to miss the victims. They're predators who hunt in America's blind spots, the roads between towns, the cheap motels, the bars where people go to be forgotten and to forget. The trail of bodies Vic leaves is telling. These aren't high-profile murders that spark manhunts. They're drifters, sex workers, people at roadside bars whose deaths barely register. The film suggests monsters thrive not despite social decay, but specifically because of it. When communities fragment, when institutions fail, and when people become isolated and desperate, predators find easy hunting. This has real-world parallels. Struggling communities face higher rates of violence, addiction, and exploitation. Not because the people are worse there, but because protective structures have eroded. When police departments are underfunded, when mental health services are non-existent and economic opportunities have vanished, vulnerability increases. The monsters in Animals are supernatural, but the conditions that allow them to operate freely are depressingly common. When Nora enters Sid's life, she brings what he hasn't felt in years: excitement, possibility, intensity. She has money, she's sexually aggressive, and she makes him feel alive. Now that she's transforming him into a monster, it's almost beside the point. She's offering escape from the slow death of his current life. And that's the film's most troubling insight. In places without hope, becoming a monster might feel like the only path to vitality. Sid's heightened senses, increased strength, and sharpened emotions, these aren't negative from his perspective. Yeah, sure, he's losing control and becoming violent, but he's also feeling powerful. The alternative is numbness, routine, the gradual erosion of self that comes from having nothing really to strive for. The film suggests that when legitimate paths to fulfillment are closed off, people will seek illegitimate ones. When the American dream feels inaccessible, when hard work leads nowhere, and when the social contract's been broken, what then? For Sid, the answer is transformation into something inhuman, something that operates outside the rules that have already failed him. Now, Jane, the good werewolf, does represent an alternative, normalcy, restraint, and conventional life. She helps Sid quit drinking, get a job at the bar. Although it is notable, it's still in the same dead-end location, and settle into a stable, loving relationship. The film presents this as redemption, as Sid choosing his humanity over monstrousness. But it also subtly acknowledges the limitations of this choice. Jane does offer stability, not escape. In the end, they're living in a cabin in the woods, still isolated, still on the margins, just in a slightly different way. Even the good ending involves a retreat, not reintegration into a thriving community. And this is perhaps the bleakest implication. For people in dying towns, there might not be any good options. You can become a monster like Nora and Vic, destroying others to fill the emptiness inside you. You can become a controlled monster like Jane, restraining your nature to fit into a society that's already abandoned you. Or you can be like Sid at the beginning, fully human but slowly dying inside. Animals doesn't offer a solution. Sid and Jane do survive, but they don't revitalize the community or create new opportunities. They retreat to the woods, living on the edges of a society that has nothing to offer them. The bar where Sid's friend died presumably still remains, still serving people with nowhere else to go. The roads where Nora and Vic hunted are still there. They're just waiting for the next predators. The death of small-town America isn't a sudden catastrophe in the film. It's a slow rot, a gradual bleeding out of vitality and hope. The monsters don't cause this death. They simply recognize it and take advantage of it. In places that society has abandoned, the film suggests we're all in danger of becoming monsters. Not because we're evil, but because monstrousness becomes a rational response to an irrational situation. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of animals is how it makes becoming a werewolf seem almost reasonable. When the alternative is slow death by stagnation, when the promised rewards of playing by the rules don't materialize, and when your town is dying and taking you with it, what's really so bad about transformation? At least as a monster, you'll feel something. At least as a monster, you're not slowly fading away. The film doesn't celebrate this logic, but it does understand it. And that understanding is what makes the horror feel so close to home. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King from 2008. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bolt in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.